Before you scroll away, imagine this. A shy young man walks onto the biggest talent stage in the world. The audience laughs. The judges expect another failed audition. Simon Cowell is already reaching for the red buzzer. But then, in the final seconds, something happens that leaves the entire theater frozen in complete silence. By the end of this story, you'll understand why millions couldn't stop talking about this unforgettable moment. And if stories of hope, courage, and impossible dreams inspire you, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us until the very end because the final twist is something you will never forget. The bright lights of the theater made everything look larger than life. Thousands of people filled the seats, whispering excitedly while cameras moved across the audience searching for emotional reactions. Backstage, contestants nervously practiced their songs, repeated dance moves, or silently prayed. Among them stood a thin 24-year-old Filipino man named Miguel Santos. He wore a simple white button-up shirt, faded black jeans, and worn-out shoes that had clearly seen better days. His hands shook as he stared at the stage entrance. Miguel had traveled thousands of miles from a small fishing village in the Philippines. Life had never been easy. His father had spent years fishing in dangerous waters before passing away during a violent storm when Miguel was only 14. After that tragedy, Miguel became the man of the house. He worked every job he could find. During the day he carried heavy sacks at the local market. At night he sang in tiny roadside restaurants where customers barely looked up from their meals. The money he earned helped his mother buy medicine and kept his younger sister in school. There was one thing that always gave Miguel hope. His father had loved Elvis Presley. Every Sunday evening, they would listen to old Elvis records on a dusty radio while pretending they were performing in front of thousands of fans. Before his father died, he had smiled and said, "One day your voice will reach places mine never could." Miguel never forgot those words. Years later, a friend secretly uploaded one of Miguel's performances online. The video slowly gained attention until someone encouraged him to audition for the world's biggest talent competition. Most people laughed at the idea. An Elvis singer? Nobody wants that anymore. You'll embarrass yourself. You're too poor to compete with professionals. Miguel heard every insult. But he also remembered his father's promise. Backstage, a producer called his name. "It's your turn." Miguel took one deep breath and walked toward the stage. The audience politely applauded as he stepped into the spotlight. Simon Cowell looked at him with curiosity. "What's your name?" "My name is Miguel Santos, sir." "Where are you from?" "I'm from the Philippines." The audience cheered warmly. Simon smiled slightly. "And what do you do for a living?" Miguel hesitated. "I work at a fish market, and I sing whenever people allow me." Some people in the audience quietly smiled. Simon continued. "So, why are you here today?" Miguel looked toward the ceiling for just a second. "I'm here because my father believed I could do something impossible." For a brief moment the room became quiet. Simon nodded politely. "Good luck." The music began. Miguel started singing. But something was wrong. His voice sounded nervous. His breathing became uneven. Several notes were weak. People in the audience exchanged uncomfortable looks. One judge slowly reached toward the buzzer. Simon leaned back in his chair with a disappointed expression. It seemed obvious. Another contestant whose dreams would end in less than a minute. Miguel noticed everything. The doubtful faces. The whispers. The disappointment. His confidence disappeared. Halfway through the song his voice cracked. Someone in the audience sighed. Simon slowly lifted his hand toward the red buzzer. Backstage, producers prepared for another quick elimination. Miguel closed his eyes. For one heartbreaking second, everything around him disappeared. He remembered standing beside his father on the beach. The sound of the waves. The old radio. his father's smile. And then he remembered one sentence. Don't sing with your voice, sing with your heart. Miguel opened his eyes. He stepped away from the microphone. The music suddenly stopped. The audience looked confused. Even Simon frowned. What are you doing? One judge whispered. Miguel looked toward the band. May I start again? The audience waited. Simon crossed his arms. You have one chance. Miguel nodded. The lights dimmed. A single spotlight remained. This time there was no fear in his eyes. Only determination. The band restarted with a slower introduction. Miguel closed his eyes. Then, one powerful note exploded through the theater. It wasn't just an Elvis impression. It sounded emotional. Raw. Honest. Every word carried years of struggle, loss, sacrifice, and hope. The audience immediately stopped whispering. People leaned forward. One judge's mouth slowly fell open. Simon removed his glasses. Miguel's voice continued growing stronger. He moved across the stage with confidence that hadn't existed moments before. Every high note landed perfectly. Every emotional phrase touched the audience. His performance transformed from simple singing into storytelling. The crowd erupted into applause before the song even ended. People stood from their seats. Some cried. Others screamed. Phones filled the air recording every second. The camera showed Simon Cowell. For the first time that evening, he wasn't speaking. He simply stared. The final chorus arrived. Miguel poured every painful memory into those last few notes. His father's dream. His mother's sacrifices. His sister's future. His own years of rejection. Everything became part of that final performance. When the last note echoed through the theater. Complete silence. Not because people disliked it. Because they couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. Then, the entire audience exploded. Thousands of people jumped to their feet. The applause shook the building. The judges stood together clapping. One judge wiped away tears. Another laughed in complete disbelief. Simon slowly smiled. He walked onto the stage. Something he almost never did. Standing beside Miguel, Simon looked directly into his eyes. You know, 30 seconds ago I was ready to stop your performance. The audience laughed. Simon continued. But then you reminded me why this show exists. Miguel's eyes filled with tears. Simon smiled. That wasn't an impression of Elvis. That was you. And that's what made it unforgettable. The audience cheered louder than ever. Miguel covered his face while trying not to cry. Back home in the Philippines, neighbors gathered around televisions inside tiny homes. Restaurants stopped serving food. Fish markets became quiet. Entire streets celebrated together as they watched Miguel represent their country. His mother cried while holding the old photograph of Miguel and his father sitting beside the radio. She whispered softly. He kept his promise. Days later, Miguel's audition spread across the internet. Millions watched it. Music producers called. Television stations requested interviews. People from around the world shared messages describing how Miguel had inspired them to keep chasing dreams they had almost abandoned. But when reporters asked him what success meant, Miguel gave a simple answer. I didn't come here to become famous. I came here to prove that no dream is too small when it's carried by a heart that refuses to quit. Months later, Miguel returned to his village. Nothing had changed except one thing. Children now gathered around him asking how they could chase their own dreams. Miguel smiled. He pointed toward the ocean where his father once worked. My father never stood on this stage. He never became famous. But he believed in me when nobody else did. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you isn't money or opportunities. It's belief. And when someone believes in you, never waste that gift. As the sun disappeared behind the sea, Miguel placed fresh flowers near his father's resting place. He quietly sang the same Elvis song they had once listened to together. This time, he wasn't singing to win a competition. He wasn't singing for millions of viewers. He was singing to the man who believed in him before the world ever did. And somewhere, beyond the applause, beyond the cameras, beyond the bright stage lights, it felt as though his father was smiling. Because the impossible dream they once shared beside an old radio had finally come true. Remember this whenever life tells you that you're too ordinary, too late, too poor, or too unknown to succeed. The world may judge your first few moments, just as Simon almost did. But your story is never decided by a weak beginning. Sometimes, all it takes is one final chance, one fearless decision, and one moment of believing in yourself to change everything forever. Never stop believing, because your last second could become the moment the whole world remembers.